So first things, a few things that I noticed about this image and what struck me and why I took a picture in the first place. Obviously the colors, for me, make an interesting contrast against the gray background. But it's sort of a chance to play around with shapes in the urban environment. So we have, a lot of kind of rectangular structures. They have straight lines. We also have, very bright displays. And then some figures, right? So I made sure to capture like this person's head. And I kind of like how that provides an interesting counterpoint at the bottom underneath all this technological advertising. So I'm just gonna, some of it is, this is a little bit more, some of it's more straightforward, some of it's trickier than doing a landscape. There's almost no natural environment in here. So there's a couple of things that I'm going to try doing with using my brushes where, they're kind of like shortcuts or easy ways to convey straight lines and shapes of buildings, things like that. So I'm just going to start outlining very roughly the shapes. And I'm going to keep, the billboard displays, that tower of displays. I kind of want to keep that as the most important thing. So proportionally, I'll try to, I'm going to stay pretty true to the to that center block, that tower as a focal point. Okay. I'm going to mix. I'm going to mix my ultramarine with my burnt sienna.
And instead of using like a Payne's gray, because you want a little more warmth in it?
Yeah. I can always go back in with Payne's gray if I want like colder, harder tone in certain areas. But as a base layer, I feel like this can work well. I feel like I need a even larger brush.
Like a flat brush?
I think something like this big.
What is that? What number is that?
It's a 12.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna literally be pretty liberal with this. Trying to stay away from the billboards. Some of these areas here, it's gonna be a little, it's not gonna be exact, but.
Is your paper on a flat surface?
Flat surface?
Yeah, is the paper level on a flat surface, or is it?
It's tilted. My table is tilted towards me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it definitely helps with the letting the water come down, flow down.
So in a way, you're painting with the water.
Yeah.
I mean, very very
Loosely.
loosely. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, this is gonna be, it should dry. It looks dark, but it should dry pretty light enough to still effectively show our values.
Mm-hmm.
So wherever there's like areas of like pretty dark, I make sure to cover those with this gray,
Mm-hmm.
because it will only help with conveying darkness
Mm-hmm.
later.
Right.
I'm keeping in mind that at the bottom of the street here, there's kind of like some opportunities for
Details.
some color and, you know.
Some more specificity, more details.
Yeah. Yeah, so even where there's like this, the color of his hat, I'm not even really caring about what that color is right now. And I'm just liberally going over that with the gray. Because the gray kind of just infuses into everything. It's reflecting off everything. So I'm gonna clean that up a little bit. There's dark areas here, which I will connect using this gray, connect to the dark areas around it.
I think we'll be back in May. I'll probably try to come back to the Booney classes starting then.
Awesome.
I could keep doing this too.
That'd be great. So I'm actually going to use some Payne's Gray now, and while the paper is still pretty wet, just like I'm going to do some lines here.
And you're still with the 12?
Yeah. I'm kind of taking some chances here because the paper is still very curly. So it's a little unpredictable, but
When you start to do a negative space type of articulation, would you let me know about that?
sure. I mean, so much of what I'm doing in this painting is about negative space. So
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, I'm attacking the dark areas,
Mm-hmm.
you know, making sure I'm preserving certain areas that I want to color, like this red part of that small red billboard.
Yeah.
So this is actually a really good example of lots of different, there's little areas throughout the image where we have to just paint solely based on filling in negative space.
Mm.
And I'm just keeping in mind, you know, just as I'm going through this, when you make one area dark, like just think about what other areas need to be darkened along with it.
Mm.
And just looking at some of the patterns in here in the building, you only need to, you just need to hint at them.
Right.
And that's the advantage of like this very long, this brush has a very pointy tip actually. So it's kind of a nice, all of that is going to dissolve and it's going to be very diffuse, but you get the idea, because once it starts to settle down, it kind of leaves an underlayer that's, you can decide, you know, once it dries a little bit further, you can decide whether you think it's adequate,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's adequately indicating the patterns that we want. Just looking at what else here. And you know, I'm going to go here later when it dries a little bit more and the water and the paper flattens out again a little bit more. You know, there'll be a dark black line going down this, and that will help.
Yeah.
That will help cover up some of this unevenness too.
Yep.
But yeah, the paper is still pretty curled up right now. In the meantime, I'm gonna play around with the red to see what kind of red the Coca-Cola sign needs.
Mm-hmm.
And I have my eye on this one. I feel like that's pretty good.
Yeah, and that's a color that people know. They know that color.
Yeah. And I guess it's not even, I mean, it looks red on the screen, but this paint is actually called Pyrrole Orange.
It looks orange to me, yeah. It's got a brownish to it.
So I'm just adding a little bit of this quinacridone red to it. I like that combination.
Mm.
It's gonna be hard to like approximate that, but
Yeah.
I think as long as I stay more on the Pyrrole Orange side of it, it gets across more of that kind of neon.
Mm-hmm. The glow.
Yeah. So I'm just gonna, I'm not even worrying about the logo, just gonna do the colors. And you see how it spills over the edge. The billboard actually, you know, is three-dimensional.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Onto
Yeah.
right
Yeah.
there.
Mm-hmm. It's like a wraparound.
Yeah. So sometimes while the big section is still wet, I'll go back in with more of the pigment just to keep it more saturated. And then I think that's fine. I'll let that dry a little bit.
To keep it more saturated, does that mean like more uniform
Yeah,
or
more uniform,
yeah,
richer.
richer? Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. It's easier to kind of come up with this flat, even section of color.
While it's wet.
Yeah, when the whole area has been already wet.
And you did that on dry, right? You didn't wet it before. Yeah.
So getting it more saturated is easier when it's dry and I'm putting wet on dry. But once I put that first layer of paint down, I go back in with more pigment and it'll make it even richer.
Mm-hmm. Got it. Like 2 layers.
Yeah. So I'm going to let that part dry a little bit. And then I'm going to go to the Samsung, the middle one. And I'm going to try adding some blue. I have a cerulean blue.
Mm.
And, to kind of approximate that billboard, you see there's a hand in the middle of the picture.
Yeah.
I'm going to kind of do the background of that billboard loosely, keep it very kind of a little blurry right now, and kind of just leave some space for that hand.
Mm-hmm. So that's another negative space type of thing?
Yeah. And I'm thinking I should I'll use the water to kind of draw it. And just kind of, I'm eyeballing the shape of the hand.
So that's an example just with that light thing of the paper, the hand showing up as the negative space, right?
Yeah.
Interesting.
And once that dries a little bit, then I can go in with the color, which actually I'm gonna tap into that same Coca-Cola sign color.
Same palette.
Also for the billboard on top, I think I can do that as well. The billboard I'm gonna let that dry a little bit, and then the billboard on top has like the other blue I would go with is the ultramarine, and let me clean this up. And I'm going to do a wet on wet wash here. I'm leaving some space, negative space for the houses that are in that sign. And go back in with the blue. And intentionally, I'm going to make the top part of that sign a little darker.
So this is more the richer second coat. Oh, I see. Yeah, the value within the sign. I get it now. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm gonna just lift up some areas here to kind of mimic the text that's on the billboard. It's not going to be perfect because I'm not lifting it up super exact. I'm not trying to actually make the letters, but just hinting. I guess I could have done that with, it's a little harder with the this orange to do that same kind of lifting for the Coca-Cola. But let's just try that for example. I think it's not going to be great. Yeah, it takes a little bit more effort. I probably could have tried earlier, but so that's just one of the things where it's like, okay, if I can't do it there, do I really want to try to get the letters in the other ones?
Right.
To make it consistent, I'm probably not going to work too hard on that.
Why is the red harder? Is it just because it's a lighter warmer value? Is that why it's harder to lift?
It stains more.
Okay, so it adheres and it sucks into the paper more. Or?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's a light version of the same color, right? That's
the light version of that same color effectively gives us the skin color. And once that does a little bit more, or actually I can go in with just slightly richer, maybe make sure I have some of that red in there. I can do the shadow areas here.
Oh yeah, right. And that's essentially creating a negative space as well, or no?
Yeah.
Is that
Okay, so the rest of the paper, it's drying up more, so I can try to treat some of those other areas. You know, like if you notice the way I did the wash, it actually dried darker than I expected. So like over here on this side, where the sky, the tall, like this bit of sky that appears on the left side, it actually is looking pretty dark compared to the picture now, but I can resolve that by just making sure everything else I do is a little bit darker.
Yeah.
So I'm going to, you know, some of these building surfaces, there's stone or cement is warmer. So
yeah. And that warmer building has kind of a curve to it. It's not so boxy. Not that you need to represent that.
And actually, I can just do the whole surface here, even though there's that big section of window.
So you're going to create the negative space for that white on the side just by darkening.
Yeah.
And is negative space necessarily a lighter value?
I think it's just like kind of the inverse. So
inverse.
So it could be, I mean, generally it's where you're drawing or sketching or painting a surface to imply the shape of something else. You know? I'm going to jump into the Payne's Gray and deal with this one dark area over here. Gonna.
And is that a shadow or is that?
Yeah.
What is? That's a shadow. Okay.
Yeah. Again, like sometimes it just helps jumpstart the shaping. The other thing I was going to show was using a flat brush to get the lines that we need. And sometimes this can be faster in some ways. Offering a little bit more control in some on some surfaces. Actually, I didn't want to cover up all of that orange there, but it's okay.
Yeah, I was wondering, you had left it, like I was wondering if that was a negative value or a value that you were leaving there. I was curious, but then you came down and filled it, so.
And all of this, like when I'm filling in with the dark, I can always go back in and lift areas that I need to be lifted. So sometimes you can use the shape of your brush to your advantage to like hint at these shapes more easily than just a regular round brush.
Right. I remember when I was working on the Mesro thing, you suggested the flat brush for the bricks, and that was really helpful. Yeah.
So So if I was, creating a finished piece out of this, I would be turning the paper around, like making sure I get like the lines very, very straight.
Yeah.
But for now, for this, because of time, I'm trying to get this down as fast as I can.
Yeah.
And so, it's definitely, it's rougher. And it's more akin to like plein air painting.
Okay. That's really helpful to know. That gives me a perspective of what you're accomplishing now and for what reasons, but although that you might do it somewhat differently in another circumstance. That's helpful.
Yeah, it's a good lesson in like understanding what can be done within a time limitation or any kind of restriction. And it's useful for like instilling confidence in like not worrying about getting something exactly the way it is, because sometimes it's more important for you to just kind of get your chops in, right? Like just when you're moving fast, you get a sense of like what the larger shapes are. You get a sense of what's important. Because ultimately, when you get to the end, you're getting there faster than you normally would. And sometimes just that faster process gives you an interesting perspective in that you realize some things that you might spend painstaking time, you might be more painstaking about. Maybe they're not worth it.
Yeah. Right. And I don't have that much attention to do too much detail, so I kind of like a faster process. And that's a good point.
See, the people, I'm making sure that they're correspondingly darker. So I'm not even really paying attention to what the actual colors on their clothes or their skin are right now.
Yeah.
I'll be able to approximate that once I get these values down right. Or at least get the values in proportion to each other once I get those down.
In a way, that seems like the messy part.
Yeah.
That you talk about, like you call it ugly sometimes, a messy ugly. It's like you gotta do all this messy ugly valuing before you can detail and kind of bring it to focus, so to speak. Yeah. It's a beautiful process.
Only when you've done this a few times where you've kind of forced yourself to get to the end of something, can you start to really get a feel for like what are shortcuts, what are things that you can do on the fly that are interesting. Yeah, it's a really fun. It's a really fun process, I think.
Did you learn it by doing plein air or?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah.
Like I definitely gained confidence moving fast, doing plein air. I want this to be brighter so that
it shows the wrap.
Yeah, so it looks like it's wrapping.
Was that Payne's gray you're using right now?
No, sorry, that was my Pyrrole orange with a little bit of the quinacridone red to make it
Okay.
darker.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I have the Payne's gray kind of sitting over here, which I'm kind of like applying loosely to everything when you need something dark.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's definitely, you get to a certain point in this, a certain stage in this particular painting where, okay, suddenly I can start using that Payne's gray to do like certain lines, like that.
Yeah.
And I'm not going to do all of these lines, but there's a couple of things here that can, if you like the water, there's a water tower here.
Yeah, I see that.
If I just end it right there, right? Then it hints at the edge, the rooftop, the line of that rooftop.
Right.
Yeah, in a really nice way. So you don't have to like draw all of it.
Right. So that's the negative. That's the use of negative space right there. Uh-huh. That's what you did with the bricks also, and the snow and the bricks is not all the lines, but
yeah,
suggestive of. So you're going back and forth from the paper surface to the image, and just making judgments each time, right? Just, you're like you're saying, okay, my eye is catching this, and just it's just back and forth sort of play.
Yeah. Because now I've gotten to the point where, okay, I'm trying to fill in certain values to make the shapes make sense.
Mm.
And this is like where, I'm pretty liberally getting my colors down. I'm not too worried about what the colors are as much as I want to get the relationships,
Mm.
the values, right?
Yes, using color for value, right?
Yeah. And same here, we have the person's hat here.
Yeah.
I'm going to use like a cooler yellow. And it's because I don't want it to be too warm.
Mm-hmm.
I'm using the cooler yellow, and it's kind of dirty. My brush is
shaded,
dirty, but I'm okay with that because
it's shaded. Yeah.
Yeah. And I'm just liberally going in here to the Payne's gray, filling in the rest of his hoodie. I'm gonna go in here with the headphones. That could have been a thinner line, but it's okay if these colors kind of bleed into each other, It lends some interest. And I'm keeping in mind like certain nuances here. The top of the headphones, like there's going to be a sliver of like light that's reflecting off the top. So, keep the darkest parts towards like the bottoms, right? The undersides of the headphones, of the hat, beneath this hood. And then in the hat itself, it's I'm not going to work on it too much, but it gets cooler in the shaded parts. We want to give some dimension. So I'm going to take that yellow. Now my brush is really dirty, but I'm going to take that yellow.
So you don't mind putting the Payne's gray into the right into the the color there.
Yeah, I might. Well, I don't really want to put it right in here.
Okay.
But I'll do it on the dish.
Because I get worried about that. I'm like, oh, I guess I'm not supposed to put the colors in there, you know. So, but it doesn't matter if you do it a little bit. I noticed. Yeah, definitely gives it some dimension.
See the little areas of color that are fun to bring out. Just very loose here. Not really paying attention to exactly what they are.
Yeah.
Gonna put some yellow, a warmer yellow.
I have more time, as I said, because its sun is setting later, so I have more time if you want more time, whatever works for you.
So, there's a danger of it getting into becoming a muddy mess, with your dish and, where I'm mixing all these colors. But for a lot of these passages here, it's actually suitable to be a little muddy, I think.
Because of the fogginess and the wintry scene and
yeah. The brush is a little too big, but it's all right. Yeah, you do stuff like this and you deal with your mistakes and your unintentional, strokes, and you realize, well, maybe it wasn't that bad, right?
You're making me feel better. Sometimes like that, I get so nervous and I just am like, oh, I get really uptight about it. So that's it's good. That's good advice.
yeah. Work on this guy's face down here, or we can do his hair. There's a little bit of brown that I want to capture on his face so that he doesn't just seem like a dark mass.
Yeah.
And I'm jumping around because, I'm letting those areas up above dry a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's not exact. I'm not getting the buildings exactly the way they should be, but I'm going to be okay with that. I could have done that with the flat brush. Sometimes that's more like for structure. It'll be a little bit better, easier to like show uniformity.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you don't necessarily want it to be too uniform, I guess. So I'm gonna just break it up a little bit. Same with this, these edges are too hard, so I'm gonna break them up. So as I'm slowly going around to different areas, I'm slowly building up, right, to get some of these areas darker and darker.
Mm-hmm.
So you see like a flat brush here really helps with just like easily doing a rectangle
Yeah,
structure.
I saw that. Yeah.
And I'm just gonna like put some like little like columns of color around here, and it's like, you know, I think it works, especially in Times Square, because the colors are all reflecting off everything.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes it's hard to see where, actually down here, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a good amount of color there. There's also some green, or maybe I can do this cool
An artificial light. Yeah.
Yeah. So like that, right? And it's kind of all blending together. And I'm okay just using very abstract strokes here. Some of these lines, they're a little too stark for me. I'm just gonna go through and make them a little rough, a little more abstract. And also a fun trick is you can, with a pretty dry brush, you know, you can, using a flat brush, you use the very edge of it to make like small lines. It's kind of fun.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that. Yeah, and even thinner lines like that.
Mm.
Up here too, I would do that. It's a little easier than like dragging the tip of a smaller brush down.
Oh yeah.
In a straight line, you know? And you don't have to do the whole thing. You just have to hint at the length of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the curve, you can depict the curve of it by just getting a few of these strokes in there. And I would use a much thinner brush to do that. And I'm dragging my brush, twirling it as I go through the pigment in the dish,
Mm-hmm.
twirling it to get a fine point.
Yeah. So you start down on the left side, curve up a little bit, come back down on the right side.
Exactly.
Yeah, and that creates the edge. I can see that. Yeah. Cool. It definitely does it.
But I will go back to my flat brush to get some of these finer lines. Some of these lines in this building here, I don't want to be too bold with them because it'll kind of be distracting if I have these lines too thick, but I just want to get the sense.
Yeah, because that's a very reflective surface on that side. Yeah.
So you want to get like these lines kind of consistently sweeping down this way, perspective-wise, you know? So that's always a little tricky, and you kind of just have to eyeball it, I mean.
So cool.
Noticing here, I want to have some curved edges here. A little bit more convincing. Darker areas here. Wherever there's really bright areas, painting the negative space around it helps to increase the value of that. Make it brighter, right?
Yeah.
And what's cool about these like urban neon scenes is you can have a lot of like reflective surfaces and you just kind of just leave blank spots and it's almost convincing, you know? I'm going to soften this a bit. It's kind of unnatural, right? When you have these really hard edges, it's not as believable. But this way it feels more like a soft surface.
Right.
You know?
Can you lift it all once it's dry, or is that pretty much your only chance to lift?
Yeah, you can lift after it's dried. I'm going in here with a little bit of some darker values here because that house has some structure in the image. Just makes it a little bit more interesting.
I don't remember you using a flat brush too much in yet. This is a lot more extensive use of it.
Yeah. There's a little bit of yellow in this stoplight. That is, I mean, obviously there's yellow in the stoplight, but in this picture, there's really a lot of grays reflecting onto it, you know. what else here? Sorry, go back to the larger brush. So I'm painting in the dark area here to make this sign stand out.
Mm-hmm.
There's this like black kind of cross statue kind of thing here.
Mm-hmm.
A lot more like reds and stuff happening down here.
Yeah.
And then if I just, fill in this area down here, it achieves it gets us to the value here and makes that sign clearly stand out. And then we top it off by, adding a little bit of whatever that green text is.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And it's just not to like really tell people what the words are, but it's to get across the fact that it's a sign.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
And it's kind of curved, so that's why I did that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thanks for hanging with me on this.
Oh, so great. So fascinating. I really appreciate it. Yeah, there's a lot going on in the urban scene where it seems like a lot more decisions have to be made.
Yeah. So imagine doing this. I have a couple of friends who've done this like live in Times Square, and I'm looking forward to doing that too. I really want to try that, because imagine doing it with all these people trying to get past you.
I cannot. I'll come watch you. I'll bring a chair down.
Yeah.
Support.
So at a certain point, like, you'll know when to stop on this, Like,
right. You go back to the image and you're like, I don't know what else I can do.
Yeah. Without
getting too busy.
Exactly. So I don't have any of the words in here. So it doesn't make sense for me to go like much more detailed. Yeah, I mean, probably the only misgiving I have here is right now is I didn't, I meant to leave room here for the sky.
Yeah.
I wanted that to be brighter, but I think it's okay. Actually, I'm going to soften this a little bit so we kind of lose the edge of the roof more.
Mm. The way you allowed for that reflective space in that building right there to stand out, that seems very brave to do that. And
oh, this building?
Yeah, I think it's successful, but that to me, I was like, "Ooh, that would be hard. I would have a hard time trusting myself that was gonna work."
Sometimes you also have to like just pay attention to the things that some things make sense, some things don't make sense, and that sometimes should drive how much detail you put in, because sometimes if you attempt to like capture a certain level of detail, it starts to become almost abstract and like absurd. I don't know if that makes sense, but like if people can't tell what it is, then you have to question whether you needed to get it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do know what you mean. I'm thinking, how much comfort or non-comfort would it be for me to have the photograph of, a picture of the image along with the painting, just to show people this is what I was trying to do.
Right.
But what you're saying is learning to trust that they're gonna make sense of it because you've done what you need to do in order to make it make sense.
Yeah. So, for example, like these little black dots that I just put down on here, I put them down because the contrast makes it more convincing that it's a reflective surface.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And there's certain things there, like I do want to make the edge of the building darker, like this edge.
Just like with the sign, that helps bring out the dimensionality of it. Yeah. Let's see that.
Yeah. And then, there's certain places here that I can lift right now, like that. And like suddenly there's a bit of texture to this building.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'll add a little bit of yellow in these windows here, these areas that I've kind of lifted out for windows.
So that's a little warmth.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a little bit of color here, so it's kind of reflective. Yeah. And then sometimes it's just filling in some of these details is it's fun because it'll make sense in the context. And maybe I will attempt Coca-Cola very, very loosely. No, I'm not even gonna try it.
Just suggestive.
Yeah. If I wanted to do the Coca-Cola white logo here, I would use gouache on top of this.
Oh, is that thing you showed me before? A bottle of stuff?
No, that's actually the liquid mask.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You put that down beforehand.
Liquid mask is I would do it beforehand. Yeah.
And what's the wash?
Gouache is just like it's a water-based paint that's opaque.
Okay.
So it's water-based, but you can paint over darker colors. That's how I did all my nocturne scenes.
Oh, okay.
couple things here. I'm gonna make the side of this even darker just so it's consistent. And even though it's not consistent with how the building actually sits in the picture, yeah. I didn't put the flagpole in there. I mean, I have it there, but I'm like just very loosely hinted at it. Oh, his eyes. Just put a little space here between the headphones and his. Actually, this is just gonna. I'm focusing on this because there's a certain amount of detail in objects that are in the foreground that I like to put in because it will just kind of lend a little bit more believability. Because it's kind of like how you would see things in real life.
Mm-hmm.
So ultimately, you know, the focus is almost like he was the most important part of this, he or she.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So I kind of like that as a device, you know.
Definitely.
So yeah, I could definitely keep tweaking this, but I'm going to force myself to stop soon.
Okay.
I forgot that there was actually another stoplight there. I was wondering why.
Why that pole was there?
So yeah, I'm using the dirty yellow, right? The yellow that I dirtied up, but I don't care that it's dirty because it helps me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an example of like, yeah, definitely learning to let go of certain things. And like sometimes just treating the watercolor as like regular paints, you know what I mean? And not being afraid to do that.
I don't really know what you mean, but it's interesting.
Like just applying it on top of other colors regardless, you know, even
Mm-hmm.
if it's
I see. I see.
if it's not supposed to work, you know?
Got you. Okay.
Sometimes you just gotta try it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Defy convention.
Certain things need to be blurry, you know, to kind of hint at things behind, or just hint at structures. Like there's a little antenna that you can barely see. We can barely see the edges of that building in the background. Yeah. And then I'm just going to put some dark here so it's clear what these are. And that's how you put in a stoplight in a few strokes. Yeah, what do you think? Is this
I think it was great. I learned a lot. That was super super fun to watch and really informational.
I think I'm at a stopping point now.
Sounds good, Francis. I really appreciate it. It's
Thank
nice to
you.
spend time with you. I appreciate all the sharing and all the explaining that you do. I really appreciate it. It's really wonderful.
Thank you.